Welcome to International Christian Fellowship, Borehamwood. Mankind's Future, Episode 8, The Wilderness Years. It's been said that without knowledge of the past, you cannot understand the present, which is the key to the future. When we've covered the past and more, we'll explore the future, but today our story starts with the deliverance of the Israelites from bondage in Egypt about 3,500 years ago. Pharaoh insisted on keeping them as slaves, but when his firstborn son died, he then begged the Israelites to leave quickly. The Israelite sons escaped death by obeying God's instruction to daub their doorposts and lintels with the blood of a lamb. Now, you won't find that remedy in any medical journal, but you will find it in Exodus 12:22. Or again, the book of Hebrews chapter 9 verse 22 says, "Without the shedding of blood there is no forgiveness of sins." Wicked people often recognize their evilness, but don't know how to deal with it. Good people often fail to see their wickedness when compared to God's standards and refuse to do anything about it. This experience of the angel of death passing over the households daubed with blood became celebrated annually as a feast of the Passover, and Jesus gave it new significance, telling his disciples to eat bread, symbolizing a unity with his body, and drink wine in remembrance of his blood shed for the forgiveness of sin. For 3 months, God gave the Israelites the 10 Commandments as recorded in Exodus 20 and Deuteronomy chapter 5. It wasn't long before the Israelites broke God's commandments. Isn't that like us, if we're really honest with ourselves? So why did God give rules which he knew would be broken? The rules inform us of the standard he, God, expects from us. Scripture says, without holiness no man can see God. They also gave us, or give us I should say, an opportunity to examine our own lives to see just how unrighteous we are. The Bible is like a mirror in which we can see what we are really like. And if we're honest, and having looked into the mirror, we will admit our guilt. And since God is a just God, we need his mercy and forgiveness. The Bible from Genesis to Revelation shows how we can experience that mercy and forgiveness without God compromising his justice. It is liberating to know the penalty of wrongdoing has been dealt with, and that we can be released from the power of sin, shame and guilt. God tells Moses in Exodus chapter 25 verses 8 and 9, "Have them make a sanctuary for me, and I will dwell among them. Make this tabernacle and all its furnishings exactly like the pattern I will show you." The detail of tabernacle, or tent or dwelling, is so important that the Bible actually contains some 50 chapters speaking of it. The outer courtyard, or fence, was approximately 7.5 feet high, too high to look over. Only by entering could one see the incredible beauty of the decorations, but it only had one entrance on the east side. Now you may remember in episode 5 that the ark, or the barge, in which people could escape from the worldwide flood, also only had one door. The single door, or entrance, reminds us of what John tells us in chapter 10 verse 9. Jesus said, "I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved." The barrier to us entering God's presence is our sin. Between the entrance and God's special tent was an altar. To get to God's tent, you needed to bring a lamb as a sacrifice. And before it was offered on the altar, you would lay your hand on it. The repentant sinner confessed his sin, asked for forgiveness, and by faith his sin was transferred to the lamb, and the lamb's innocence was imputed to him. When we believe by faith in Jesus Christ, our sin has been transferred to Jesus, and his righteousness imputed to us, we experience a new dimension of living, which is really exciting and might well set your body tingling with excitement. Going past the altar is the special tent having 2 rooms, the second one of which is called the holiest place. It's situated as a cube, it is shaped as a cube, and I'll tell more about this particular shape in a later episode. To enter this room, one has to enter through a veil or thick, beautiful curtain. Only the high priest had permission to enter through the veil, and that only once a year, after special sacrifices had been made. When Jesus gave up his spirit while hanging on the cross, the veil, this veil I'm talking about, in the temple, was ripped from top to bottom, thus signifying that by faith in Jesus Christ's atonement, the barrier to our fellowship with God has been removed. A very important piece of furniture in the holiest place is called the Ark of the Covenant. It looked a bit like a box. Within it was kept the stone tablets on which God had written the 10 Commandments, this being the standard by which man is expected to live. It also contained Aaron's rod, which within the 24-hour period budded, blossomed, and bore almonds, testifying to God's power. A pot of manna was also placed in the ark. This was food which sustained the Israelites in their wilderness wanderings. A reminder of God's ability to provide for their physical needs, as well as their spiritual needs and emotional needs. On top of the box was a cover known as the mercy seat, or seat of atonement. When the high priest went into the holiest place, which he could only do once a year, he would sprinkle the blood on the cover, or mercy seat, for the forgiveness of the nation's sins. Now the word tabernacle means dwelling. John chapter 1 verse 14 tells us that God, in the person of Jesus Christ, came to tabernacle or dwell with us. I'd like to tell you more about God tabernacling with us, but we'll leave that for another time.